When did you wish you'd minded your own business? This girl, Mia, from my economics class, asked if I wanted to grab lunch with her, and when I said sure, she told me to sit at a table near the window, but don't talk to her when I got there. I didn't understand what she meant, but I showed up anyway. She was already sitting at a table with a guy I assumed was her boyfriend. I sat a few tables away and pretended to look at my phone while trying to figure out what was going on. Then I heard her tell him she was breaking up with him. Her voice was shaking, but clear enough that I could hear most of what she said about how they'd grown apart, and she needed space. The guy, who she called Alex, took it completely calmly. He nodded and asked quiet questions about logistics, like when she'd pick up her stuff from his place and what they'd do about the concert tickets they'd bought. After about 20 minutes, he stood up and hugged her and left without any drama at all. Mia came over to my table after he was gone and sat down across from me. "I'm really sorry for being weird about this," she said. "I just needed someone to be here in case things went bad. He has a temper, and I was scared to do it alone." I told her he seemed pretty calm, and she got this weird look on her face. He's never reacted that well to anything before. I don't know what to make of it. We ended up talking for another hour, and she gave me her number and said to text her sometime. I texted her that night, and she responded right away. But then the next afternoon, she texted saying something weird had happened. She'd come home and all her furniture had been moved slightly, like someone had pushed everything a few inches to the left. I asked if her landlord had gone in, and she said he claimed nobody had been there, but she knew she wasn't imagining it. A few days later, someone left a note under her door that said, "You made a mistake." She asked her neighbors if they'd seen anyone, and nobody had. Then she said someone was following her in a dark blue sedan that would pull away whenever she looked at it. I asked if she'd told the police, and she said they told her there wasn't much they could do about a note and a car that might be following her. Over the next week, she kept updating me, and things kept escalating. Her building's security footage had been erased for the night someone moved her furniture. Her spare key was missing even though she'd had it the day before. Someone slashed 2 of her tires in her apartment parking lot, but no other cars were touched. She told me, "I think it's Alex. I think he's trying to scare me without doing anything he could actually get arrested for." Then things started happening to me too. I came home one night and my apartment door was unlocked even though I'd locked it that morning. My bedroom window was open, and I never opened that window because it didn't close properly once you did. The next day, I got 5 calls from a blocked number with just breathing on the other end. I texted Mia asking if she'd given Alex my number. "No, why?" I told her about the calls and the unlocked door. "Oh my God, I think he saw you at the restaurant. I think he figured out you were there with me and now he thinks you're involved. I'm so sorry." She said things were getting worse, and she'd found photos on her kitchen counter of her sleeping. She was staying at a friend's place because she was too scared to sleep at her apartment. Then someone started following me too. The same dark blue sedan she'd described. I'd see it parked outside my building and behind me when I drove to campus. I tried to get the license plate, but it was always too far away or at the wrong angle. One night walking to my car, someone grabbed my arm from behind. I spun around, and it was just some guy asking for directions. But when I got to my car, there was a note under my windshield that said, "Stay away from her." I called Mia, and she didn't answer. I texted her and got no response. The next day, her phone went straight to voicemail. I drove by her apartment, and her car wasn't there. I asked people in our class if they'd seen her, and nobody had. She'd missed almost a week of classes. I filed a police report, but they said she was an adult and could go where she wanted. Things kept happening at my apartment. Cabinet doors open that I'd closed. My shower curtain pulled to the wrong side. One night my TV was on playing static with the volume all the way down. I called the police, and they searched and found nothing. One of them suggested I get a carbon monoxide detector, because that could cause confusion and memory problems. After they left, I noticed my laptop was open on the kitchen counter. I'd left it closed on my desk. The screen came on, and there was a document open with one sentence typed over and over, filling the page. "She's not who you think she is." My hands were shaking as I read it again and again. I didn't know what it meant, or who had written it, or how they'd gotten into my apartment. I grabbed my keys and my phone and headed for the door. Alex was standing in the hallway. "We need to talk about Mia," he said. He looked completely normal standing there in his khaki pants and a plain blue shirt, which somehow made the whole thing worse. I kept my hand on the door and only opened it about halfway so he couldn't push his way in. "We can talk right here," I said. "My neighbors are home and can hear us if anything happens." Alex held up both hands like he was trying to calm me down. "I'm not here to cause problems. I just think you need to know some things about Mia before this goes any further." He pulled out his phone and started scrolling through old text messages. "Look, I know she seems sweet and scared, but she's done this before. Her ex before me, his name was James. She accused him of following her and breaking into her apartment too." He turned the phone screen toward me, and I could see messages from someone saved as James in his contacts. The texts showed a guy asking why Mia was telling people he was stalking her when he'd moved to a different state months ago. There were screenshots of police reports James had filed saying Mia kept showing up at his work and his new apartment. I felt my stomach twist because the messages looked real, and the dates were from about 2 years ago. She has a pattern, Alex said. When relationships end, she makes up these elaborate stories to get sympathy and attention. I'm worried she's doing it again, and now she's dragged you into it. I told him about coming home to find my door unlocked and the breathing phone calls I'd been getting from blocked numbers. Alex's face changed, and he actually looked confused instead of that calm mask he'd been wearing. I haven't called you, he said. I don't even have your number. How would I get your number? He opened his phone again and showed me his call log from the past week. I could see the dates and times, and there were no blocked calls or calls to any number that could be mine. I think Mia gave you a story about me so you'd be scared, and now she's doing things to make you think I'm after you too. It's what she does. She creates the problem and then acts like the victim. He suggested maybe I should ask Mia's friend about the last breakup and see if the story matched what Mia had told me. Then he said he had to get to work and walked back down the hallway toward the stairs. I watched him leave and he didn't look back or do anything threatening. He just left like a normal person who'd stopped by to have a conversation. I went back inside and locked the door and sat on my couch for over an hour, just staring at the wall, trying to make sense of everything. The laptop was still open on the counter with that message typed over and over. She's not who you think she is. That's exactly what Alex had just told me in different words. But I kept thinking about how scared Mia's voice had sounded when she talked about Alex at the restaurant. That fear seemed real. The shaking in her voice when she said she thought he had a temper and might hurt her. You can't fake that kind of fear, can you? But then again, if she had a history of making up stalking stories, maybe she was just good at acting scared. I picked up my phone and tried to remember everything that had happened since that lunch at the restaurant. Mia's furniture moved, the note under her door, her tires slashed, but I'd only seen photos of the tires. I hadn't actually seen any of it myself, except for what she'd told me. Then things started happening to me. My unlocked door, the breathing calls, the note on my car, my window open. But Alex just showed me his call log, and he wasn't the one calling me. So who was? I pulled up my messages and typed out a text to Mia. Hey, can we talk? Some weird stuff is happening and I need to ask you about something. I hit send and watched the screen. The message sat there with just one check mark instead of two. Then, after about 30 seconds, a red exclamation point appeared next to it, and it said, "Not delivered." I tried sending it again and got the same result. I switched to calling her and the phone didn't even ring. Instead, I got an automated voice saying, "The number you have dialed is not in service. Please check the number and try again." That made my stomach drop, because her phone had been working fine yesterday. People's phones don't just stop working overnight unless something bad happened. I tried calling one more time to make sure I'd dialed right and got the same disconnected message. Now I was really worried because either something happened to Mia or she'd deliberately cut off her phone, and I didn't know which option was worse. I barely slept that night and kept getting up to check the door camera I didn't have yet and looking out the window for that blue sedan. When morning finally came, I got dressed and drove straight to campus. The campus safety office was in the administration building near the parking garage. I walked in and told the woman at the desk I needed to report some harassment, and she called for an officer to come talk to me. Officer Sheila Parker came out about 5 minutes later. She was probably in her 40s with her hair pulled back in a tight bun, and she had this way of looking at you that made you feel like she was actually listening. We went into a small office with a desk and 2 chairs, and she pulled out a notebook. "Tell me everything that's been happening," she said. So I did. I told her about being at the restaurant with Mia and witnessing the breakup, about Mia's apartment being broken into and her furniture moved and her tires slashed, about my own apartment door being unlocked when I came home and my window being open, about the breathing phone calls from blocked numbers and the note on my windshield telling me to stay away from her, about the laptop message and Alex showing up at my apartment late last night. Sheila wrote down every single detail with dates and times as best as I could remember them. She asked questions about whether I'd kept any of the notes or taken photos of anything, and I felt stupid for not thinking of that before. "This is a textbook stalking pattern," Sheila said when I finished. "The escalation from property damage to direct contact, the psychological intimidation, showing up at your home. The problem is, we need documentation to build a solid case that will hold up if this goes to court." She wrote down a list of things I needed to do. First, change my locks immediately, because if someone had gotten in once, they could do it again. Second, install a camera at my door that would record anyone who came near my apartment. Third, start keeping a detailed log of every incident with exact dates, times, locations, and what happened. Write down everything, even if it seems small. Fourth, if I got any more notes or messages, keep them and photograph them before touching them too much. She tore off a page from her notebook and wrote her cell phone number on it. "Call me directly if anything else happens. Don't wait. Even if it's 3 in the morning and you hear something outside your door, you call me." Having someone actually take this seriously and treat it like a real threat instead of telling me I was probably imagining things made me feel like I could breathe a little easier. At least now I had someone on my side who knew what to do. I sat in my car in the parking garage after leaving Sheila's office and pulled up Mia's social media on my phone. I scrolled through her friends list until I found someone named Kara Conway who showed up in a bunch of Mia's photos. They were always together at parties and restaurants, and it looked like they'd been friends for years. I found Kara's Instagram and sent her a direct message explaining who I was and that I was trying to reach Mia, but her phone wasn't working. I said I was worried about her and asked if Kara knew where she was. Then I sat there refreshing the app every few seconds, like that would make her respond faster. It took about 20 minutes, but then I saw the 3 dots showing Kara was typing. Her message came through saying yes, Mia was staying at her apartment and had been there for almost a week. She said Mia was too scared to use her phone because someone had tried to do a SIM swap to take over her number, and she didn't trust it anymore. Kara gave me her address and said I could come over that afternoon if I wanted to talk in person. I drove to Kara's apartment complex around 2 that afternoon. She lived in a nicer building than mine with a security gate and cameras in the parking lot. She buzzed me in and met me at her door on the 3rd floor. Kara was tall with curly red hair, and she looked tired like she hadn't been sleeping well either. She led me into her living room where Mia was sitting on the couch wrapped in a blanket, even though it wasn't cold. Mia looked up when I came in, and I could see she'd been crying. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she looked smaller somehow, like she'd shrunk into herself. Kara sat down next to her and pulled out her phone. Mia sent me photos of everything that happened at her apartment before she came to stay here, Kara said. She showed me pictures of Mia's living room with all the furniture shifted several inches to the left. You could see the indentations in the carpet where everything used to be, and the new positions didn't line up. There were photos of her slashed tires with deep cuts in the rubber, photos of the note that had been left under her door. Everything Mia had told me about was right there in the pictures with timestamps showing when they were taken. The thing about James, her ex before Alex, Kara continued, that's not the whole story. Mia did date James, and when they broke up, he did file police reports. But that was because Mia actually was stalked back then by some guy from her gym who got obsessed with her. James thought Mia was making it up to get attention from him, so he filed reports saying she was harassing him. But then the gym guy got arrested for breaking into Mia's apartment, and James had to admit he'd been wrong about the whole thing. Alex is using that situation to make Mia look like she makes things up, but it's not true. I got back to my apartment around 6 that evening and found my neighbor standing in the hallway looking at his phone. He was an older guy, maybe 60, who lived 2 doors down and mostly kept to himself. He looked up when I came down the hall. "Hey, I've been meaning to talk to you," he said. "I've seen this dark blue sedan parked across the street a bunch of times over the past week or so. Same car, same spot, usually late at night or early morning. It seemed weird because we don't have any overnight guest parking on that side." He pulled up a photo on his phone showing a blue sedan parked under a streetlight. The image was grainy, but you could make out the shape of the car and part of the license plate. "I couldn't get the whole plate number, but I got these," he said, showing me a piece of paper where he'd written down 4 digits and a letter. "I was going to report it to the building manager, but figured I should tell you first since I saw the same car following you when you left for campus yesterday morning." He handed me the paper, and I felt my hands start shaking as I took it. This was proof, real proof that someone was actually watching me and following me, and it wasn't all in my head. I thanked him and went inside and immediately called Sheila Parker's number. She answered on the 2nd ring, and I told her about the neighbor's partial plate number. Sheila said she would run it through the system to see if any vehicles matching that description had been reported near campus or in stalking cases. She asked if I had any other security measures in place, and I admitted I didn't know where to start. She connected me with someone from campus IT named Corey Barkley, who specialized in helping students set up phone logging and cameras for situations like mine. Corey called me 20 minutes later, and we scheduled him to come over the next afternoon. I barely slept that night knowing someone had been watching my building for over a week. The next day, Corey showed up with a box of equipment and spent 2 hours helping me install a motion-activated camera at my door. He set up an app on my phone that would automatically record any incoming calls with timestamps and caller information, even if the number was blocked. He told me he had dealt with stalking cases before through campus safety and knew exactly what kind of proof the police needed to take action. The camera had a wide-angle lens that covered my entire doorway and the hallway in both directions, and it would save footage to cloud storage so nobody could delete it, even if they took the camera itself. After Corey left, I drove to campus for my afternoon class and kept checking my mirrors the whole way. That evening when I got home, I remembered my dashcam had been recording this whole time. I pulled the SD card and went through the footage from the past week. There it was on Tuesday afternoon, the blue sedan pulling out behind me as I left campus and following 3 car lengths back all the way to my apartment complex. I saved the footage with timestamps showing the exact route and sent it to Sheila through the secure upload link she had given me. For the first time since this started, I felt like I had real proof that wasn't just my word against someone else's. The next morning, I woke up to a message request on social media from an account using Mia's photos. The account asked me to meet at a parking lot on the edge of town to explain everything that was happening. I checked the account profile, and it had been created yesterday with no other posts or friends, which made every alarm in my head go off. I took screenshots of the message and the account details and reported it to Sheila instead of responding. She texted back within 10 minutes telling me not to engage with any messages like that and to forward anything else suspicious directly to her. An hour later, I got an email from my economics professor asking me to come to his office to discuss an anonymous tip he had received, claiming I cheated on the last exam. I had never cheated on anything in my life, and my stomach dropped reading his email. The timing was too perfect to be random. Someone was trying to mess with my reputation and make me look like a liar before I could build a case against them. I emailed back asking for details about the accusation and said I was happy to discuss it, but wanted to understand what I was accused of first. Later that afternoon, I drove past Mia's old apartment building to see if her car had shown up. It hadn't, but I noticed the dumpster area had trash scattered around it from collection day. Something caught my eye in the mess near the edge of the dumpster pad. I pulled over and walked closer, finding a locksmith receipt half buried under some cardboard. The receipt was for duplicate keys made 2 weeks ago under a name I didn't recognize, but the date matched exactly when Mia said her spare key went missing. I took several photos of the receipt from different angles, making sure the date and key type were clearly visible. The key description matched the standard apartment keys used in Mia's building. I put the receipt in a plastic bag I had in my car and added it to the growing folder of proof I was collecting. My new doorbell camera sent me an alert at 2 in the morning that night. I grabbed my phone and opened the app to see someone in black gloves testing my doorknob. The person wasn't wearing any kind of uniform that would indicate building maintenance or management. When the camera light turned on, the person looked up briefly before walking quickly down the hallway toward the stairs. The footage was clear enough to show it was a man about 6 feet tall with a similar build to Alex. I saved the video and sent it to Sheila immediately, even though it was the middle of the night. The next evening I had to stay late at the library working on a project. When I finished around 10, I called the campus escort service instead of walking to my car alone like I normally would. A student security officer met me at the library entrance and walked with me across campus to the parking lot. It felt like giving in to fear, but Sheila had told me it was smart to change my patterns and make myself harder to approach when I was alone. The escort service was free and available until midnight every night, and the officer told me lots of students used it, especially during winter when it got dark early. The next morning, Sheila asked me to come to the campus safety office to go over everything we had collected so far. She had printed out all the photos and videos and organized them on her desk with dates and times. She explained she was filing a formal stalking incident report with the local police, and this was the first step toward getting a protective order. She walked me through what the legal process would look like over the next few weeks, including court hearings and the evidence requirements for different types of protective orders. She said the documented pattern of behavior we had built up was strong enough to justify moving forward. That afternoon, my landlord called me. Sheila had contacted him about building security and asked him to check his records for any unusual activity. He told me he had gone through his entry logs and discovered his master key was missing from his office for 24 hours last week. The key had been hanging on a hook in his office, which he usually kept locked, but he had left it unlocked one afternoon when he ran out to deal with a maintenance emergency. When he came back, the key was still there, so he didn't think anything of it. But checking his key tracking log, he noticed the master key had been signed out and returned during that window, except the signature didn't match any of his staff members' handwriting. That explained how someone got into my apartment to move things around and open my laptop. Larry said he was changing all the master locks in the building and getting a proper key control system installed. He apologized for the security gap and told me he wouldn't charge me for installing a new lock on my door. The next morning, I pulled up the restaurant's number that Alex had mentioned when he was standing in my hallway. I called and asked to speak to the manager about verifying an employee's schedule. The woman who answered put me on hold for a few minutes before a guy came on the line and asked what date I needed to check. I gave him the specific night my apartment had been broken into, and he told me to hold on while he looked at the schedule book. When he came back, he said Alex wasn't on the schedule that night and actually hadn't worked there in over 3 weeks because he'd quit without notice. I thanked him and hung up, feeling my hands shake because now I had proof Alex had lied directly to my face about where he was that night. I texted Sheila right away with the information, and she responded within minutes saying this was important evidence to document. 2 days later, Sheila called me with news about the blue sedan. Someone had reported it parked illegally near campus, and it got a ticket that included the full license plate number in the parking enforcement database. She walked me through filing a public records request to get the vehicle registration information, which required filling out forms and paying a small fee. The clerk at the records office said it would take 3 to 5 business days to process the request, but once approved, I'd get the registered owner's name and address. While I waited for those records, Kara sent me a voice memo she'd recorded with Mia's permission. I put in my headphones and listened to Mia's voice describing specific dates when she'd heard footsteps outside her apartment door at night or seen the blue sedan parked across from her building. Her voice shook on the recording, but she was clear about every detail and gave exact dates and times for 6 different incidents. I pulled up my own notes about things that had happened at my place, and 3 of the dates matched perfectly with nights when I'd found my door unlocked or gotten the breathing phone calls. I saved the voice memo and sent it to Sheila along with my comparison notes showing the pattern. The hidden camera Corey had helped me install inside my apartment finally captured something useful. I checked the footage every morning, and for the first week, it showed nothing but my empty living room. Then, on a Thursday night, the motion sensor triggered and recorded a dark figure moving through my apartment around 2 in the morning. The person wore dark clothes and moved quickly but carefully, like they knew exactly where they were going. The footage was grainy because I'd kept the lights off, but it clearly showed someone going to my desk and picking up papers. When the figure reached for my laptop, I caught a glimpse of their wrist, and there was a distinctive tattoo visible for just a few seconds before they moved out of frame. I downloaded the video file immediately and sent it to Sheila with a note about the tattoo detail. She responded saying she was escalating everything to the detective division because we now had video evidence of someone breaking into my home. The next afternoon, I got a call from Detective Tobias Eckert, who introduced himself as a specialist in stalking and harassment cases. He had a calm voice that somehow made me feel like someone was finally taking this seriously at the level it deserved. He asked me to come to the station and bring copies of everything I'd documented so far, including photos, videos, notes, and the voice memo from Mia. When I met him at the police station, he spent over an hour going through every piece of evidence I'd collected and took detailed notes about the timeline. He told me I'd done excellent work building the case and that the level of documentation I'd maintained was exactly what prosecutors needed to move forward with charges. He explained that stalking cases often fell apart because victims didn't have enough concrete evidence, but we had video, witness statements, and a clear pattern of escalating behavior. 3 days later, the parking ticket records came back, and Sheila called me to go over the results together. The blue sedan was registered to a rental company, and the name on the rental agreement was Alex Smith. The rental date started exactly 2 days after Mia broke up with him at the restaurant, and the contract was still active, meaning he was paying to keep the car week after week. Tobias said this was strong evidence connecting Alex directly to the surveillance we'd both experienced, and it corroborated everything Mia had reported about being followed. The same day those records arrived, I got a notification on my phone about a new voicemail from an unknown number. I played it and heard Alex's voice sounding nothing like the calm guy from the hallway. He was talking fast, and his words ran together as he claimed someone was setting him up, and he thought Mia's ex-boyfriend might be behind everything. He said he needed to meet with me to explain what was really going on, and asked me to call him back at a different number he rattled off. The voicemail went on for almost 3 minutes with him getting more desperate and insistent. I saved the recording and forwarded it directly to Tobias without responding to Alex at all. Tobias texted back within an hour, saying not to engage with any contact attempts, and that the voicemail showed consciousness of guilt. I remembered the laptop document that had appeared on my computer with the message typed over and over. I opened the file properties to check the metadata and saw the file had been created and saved on a specific date and time. I pulled up my class schedule and realized the file was saved during my economics lecture when I was definitely not home. Then I checked the window sensor app Corey had installed, and it showed my bedroom window had been opened at the exact same time the file was saved on my laptop. The correlation was perfect proof that someone had been inside my apartment during that specific window. I took screenshots of both the file metadata and the window sensor log showing the matching timestamps and sent them to Tobias. The next day, Kara forwarded me a photo that Mia had sent her. It showed a wrist tattoo that looked identical to the one I'd captured on my hidden camera footage. Mia had included a message saying she remembered seeing that same tattoo on a guy Alex used to work out with at the gym. She thought Alex might have someone helping him, which would explain how he seemed to be in multiple places at once for some of the incidents we'd documented. The tattoo was distinctive enough that it would be easy to identify if we could figure out who the gym friend was. I sent the photo comparison to Tobias, showing Mia's picture next to a screenshot from my security footage, and the tattoo patterns matched up in several specific details. Tobias called me later that evening and said he'd interviewed Larry Wooten about the building's security system. During the interview, Larry had checked his maintenance logs and discovered something disturbing about the night his master key went missing. The CCTV camera in his office had been turned off by flipping the breaker in the utility closet, which was located in a part of the building most residents never accessed. Someone had known exactly where to go to disable the camera before taking the key, and then turned it back on after returning the key the next day. Tobias said this level of planning and knowledge about the building's layout suggested either someone who'd been inside before or someone who'd done serious advanced research to learn where everything was located. 2 days later, Corey called me saying he'd managed to get back some deleted footage from the campus parking system. I met him at his office, and he pulled up the recovered clips on his computer, showing the blue sedan from different angles near the economics building. The timestamps matched up with my class schedule perfectly, and the car appeared in the same spots multiple times across different days. Corey burned the footage onto a disk and labeled it with dates and locations before handing it to me in a paper sleeve. I drove straight to campus safety and gave the disk to Sheila, who logged it into evidence and made copies for Tobias. She pulled out a thick stack of paperwork and spread it across her desk, explaining we had enough now to file for a restraining order. The forms asked for every single incident with exact dates and times and descriptions of what happened. Sheila walked me through each section, pointing out where I needed to be more specific about the unlocked door and the breathing phone calls. The legal language was confusing with terms I didn't understand, but she translated everything into normal words and showed me what kind of detail the judge would want to see. We spent almost 2 hours filling out the paperwork and organizing all the incidents in order from the first note on my car to the most recent camera footage. When we finished, Sheila paperclipped everything together and put it in a folder marked with my case number. I went home and stared at my laptop, thinking about how Alex seemed to know my schedule and where I'd be. Then I got an idea that felt risky, but might actually work. I opened social media and posted my class schedule for the next few days, making it look like I'd be studying at the library during specific afternoon hours. I included details about which floor and which section of the building, like I was meeting study group members there. Then I texted Tobias explaining what I'd done and asking if this was stupid. He called me back within 10 minutes and said it was actually smart as long as campus safety monitored me the whole time. He arranged for officers to be positioned around the library during the times I'd posted and told me to bring my dash cam and any other recording devices I had. The next afternoon, I parked near the library entrance with my dash cam running and the doorbell camera Corey had given me sitting in my backpack already recording. I walked into the library and found a table on the second floor near the windows where I could see the parking lot. 20 minutes before the time I'd posted, the blue sedan pulled into the lot and circled around twice before parking in a spot with a clear view of the entrance. I pulled out my phone and started recording through the window as the car made another loop around the building. My dash cam was still running in my car, and the doorbell camera in my bag captured everything from my angle inside. The sedan circled 4 more times over the next hour, always keeping distance, but clearly watching the building. I sent the video files to Tobias as soon as I got back to my car, and he confirmed campus safety had also recorded the vehicle from their positions. The next morning, Kara forwarded me an email that had been sent to Mia's department head, claiming she'd copied large sections of a paper from online sources. The email came from a new account with a fake name and included specific paragraph numbers and accusations. Tobias got involved right away and contacted the university's IT department to preserve the email headers and trace where it came from. He explained the headers would show the actual IP address and location data that could connect it back to whoever sent it. Later that day, Kara texted me a photo she'd just taken of the blue sedan parked across the street from her apartment building. She'd been looking out her window and recognized the car from my descriptions, so she grabbed her phone and zoomed in on the driver. The photo showed a side profile through the windshield, and even though it was slightly blurry, I could see the person matched Alex's height and build and the shape of his face. I forwarded the photo to Tobias immediately, and he said this was solid evidence placing Alex near where Mia was staying. I made an appointment with Student Legal Services and met with a lawyer who specialized in campus safety cases. She spread out all my documentation across her desk and read through everything carefully before explaining that a personal safety order was different from criminal charges. She said it could be issued faster based on the evidence we already had and wouldn't require the same level of proof as a criminal case. The process would take about a week if we filed everything correctly, and the order would legally require Alex to stay away from me and campus. She helped me fill out the application and attached copies of all the police reports and security footage and witness statements we'd collected. Tobias called me that evening saying he'd used everything we'd gathered to get probable cause for requesting the rental agency's GPS records. He explained the judge had agreed there was enough evidence to justify accessing the data, and the rental company had to provide complete location history for the sedan. The GPS would show everywhere the car had been with timestamps and exact coordinates, which should line up perfectly with all the incident locations at both my apartment and Mia's place. I decided to change my entire routine starting immediately, and only told Sheila and Tobias and my parents where I'd actually be going each day. I varied my routes to campus and parked in different lots, and used different building entrances every time. The constant watching over my shoulder was tiring, and I had to think through every movement before I made it. But I slept better, knowing I was being smart about this, instead of just reacting to whatever happened next. 4 days later, Tobias called with the GPS results, and his voice sounded satisfied when he told me the data had come back even better than expected. The records showed the sedan had been parked within a block of Mia's apartment complex. On every single night, she'd reported incidents happening. The coordinates were accurate enough to place the vehicle on her street during the exact time windows when her furniture got moved and her tires got slashed, and those photos appeared on her counter. The data also showed the car near my building on multiple nights, including the specific night when my door was unlocked and my window was opened. Tobias said this was the kind of evidence that would be hard for anyone to explain away in court. Tobias called me 2 days later and asked if I could meet him and Sheila at the campus safety office. When I got there, they had a plan laid out on the desk with a map of downtown and photos of a coffee shop called The Daily Grind. Tobias explained they wanted to set up a controlled meeting where I'd be visible and announce my location publicly to see if whoever was following us would show up. The coffee shop had security cameras inside and out, lots of windows and heavy foot traffic during the day. Sheila said they'd position plainclothes officers at tables inside and watching from across the street. The whole point was to document whoever appeared and catch them in the act of surveillance. I asked what would happen if things went wrong, and Tobias assured me they'd have enough officers there to handle any situation safely. Sheila handed me a panic button device that looked like a car key fob and told me to keep it in my pocket the whole time. I agreed to do it, but my hands were shaking when I left their office. I called Kara that night and asked if she could put Mia on the phone. Kara said Mia was nervous about talking directly, but she'd relay messages between us. I explained the coffee shop plan through Kara and asked if Mia felt safe staying where she was during that time. Kara confirmed Mia would stay at her apartment with the doors locked and wouldn't go anywhere until I texted that everything was done. We set up code words so I could let them know if something went wrong. If I texted the word library, it meant I was safe and the plan had worked. If I texted studying, it meant something had gone wrong and they should call the police immediately. Kara made me repeat the code words twice to make sure I had them right. She also gave me a backup number for her roommate in case Kara's phone died or something happened to it. The next morning, I posted on every social media account I had that I'd be studying at the Daily Grind downtown from noon until 4. I made it sound casual, like I was just letting friends know where I'd be. I even tagged the coffee shop's location and posted a photo of their menu from their website. Sheila texted me 30 minutes before noon, saying the officers were in position and I should head over. I drove to the coffee shop and parked in the public lot behind it. My heart was beating, so hard I could feel it in my throat. I walked inside and ordered a coffee and a muffin I knew I wouldn't be able to eat. The barista was friendly and asked if I wanted to start a tab, and I said no thanks. I found a table by the front window exactly where Sheila had told me to sit. I set up my laptop and opened a document to make it look like I was actually studying. I kept my phone on the table with the camera app ready to record. 2 plainclothes officers were sitting at a table near the back, pretending to have a conversation. I could see another officer outside across the street looking at his phone. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching myself in a movie. 20 minutes passed and nothing happened. I actually started reading the document on my laptop screen just to have something to do. Then I saw the blue sedan turn onto the street. It drove past the coffee shop slowly, and I watched it through the window. My hand moved toward my phone, but I stopped myself because Sheila had told me not to do anything obvious. The sedan circled the block and came back past the coffee shop again. Then it did a third loop, and this time it pulled into a loading zone across the street where parking wasn't allowed. I texted Sheila under the table that the car was here. She responded immediately, telling me to stay calm and keep doing what I was doing. Someone got out of the driver's side of the sedan. I couldn't see the face clearly because of the distance and the angle, but the person was wearing a dark jacket and jeans. The person walked toward the coffee shop entrance, and I forced myself to look back at my laptop screen. The door chimed when someone came in. I heard footsteps, and then a chair scraping behind me. Someone sat down at the table directly behind mine. I waited about 30 seconds, and then pretended to stretch and glance around the room casually. The man sitting behind me was looking at his phone and holding a coffee cup. He was maybe 30 years old with short, dark hair. When he reached for his coffee with his left hand, I saw the edge of a tattoo on his wrist. It was the same pattern I'd seen in my security footage when the shadow figure reached for something on my desk. My mouth went dry. I opened my camera app and angled my phone like I was texting, but actually taking photos. I got 3 shots of him from the side showing the tattoo clearly. I sent them to Sheila right away. Then I looked out the window and saw Alex standing at the bus stop across the street. He wasn't even pretending to wait for a bus. He was just standing there staring directly at the coffee shop. I took photos of him too and sent those to Sheila. She texted back telling me to stay put and keep acting normal. I watched through the window as one of the plainclothes officers walked past Alex and spoke into a radio. Another officer positioned himself on the corner, where he could see both Alex and the coffee shop entrance. The tattooed man behind me pulled out his phone and started typing. 5 seconds later, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. The message said I should come outside because someone wanted to talk to me privately. I showed the text to the officer at the back table by tilting my phone screen in his direction. He nodded slightly. The tattooed man stood up and started walking toward the door. Sheila appeared from somewhere near the counter and stepped directly in front of him. She showed him her badge and said something I couldn't hear. 2 more officers came through the door behind him, and one of them asked him to put his hands on the table. They walked him to a corner of the coffee shop away from other customers and started asking him questions. Outside, I saw Tobias approaching Alex, who was now trying to walk away from the bus stop. Tobias called out to him, and Alex stopped. They talked for a minute, and then Tobias gestured toward a police car that had pulled up to the curb. Another officer searched Alex's backpack right there on the sidewalk. I watched as they pulled out a set of keys and several small cards that looked like SIM cards. They also found what looked like printed photos and held them up to examine them. Tobias bagged everything carefully and then guided Alex toward the police car with a hand on his arm. The whole coffee shop had gone quiet. Other customers were staring at the officers and the tattooed man. The barista looked confused and worried. Sheila came over to my table and told me I needed to come to the station to give a formal statement. She said I'd done exactly what they needed, and now they had both men in custody with physical evidence. I packed up my laptop with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. At the police station, I sat in a small room with a recording device on the table. Tobias asked me to describe everything that had happened starting from the day Mia asked me to sit in the restaurant. I talked for almost an hour, going through every incident and every piece of evidence we'd collected. Halfway through my statement, Kara arrived with Mia. Mia looked exhausted but relieved. She gave her own statement in a different room, and I could hear her voice through the wall sometimes. Tobias told me the tattooed man was someone Alex knew from his gym. His name was on the gym's membership records, and they'd been seen together multiple times. The man was already talking because he realized how much evidence existed. He admitted Alex had paid him to follow both me and Mia and to break into my apartment to leave the message on my laptop. He said Alex had given him copies of keys and told him exactly when to do everything. The rental car was registered to Alex, and the GPS data matched every location perfectly. That same evening, Tobias called me and said the judge had reviewed everything and granted emergency protective orders for both Mia and me. The orders required Alex and his friend to stay at least 500 feet away from us at all times. They couldn't contact us directly or through other people. They couldn't come to campus or to our apartment buildings. If they violated the orders, they'd be arrested immediately. Tobias said the GPS data combined with the security footage and the witness statements and the physical evidence from Alex's backpack made this one of the strongest stalking cases he'd worked. The judge had been very clear that the behavior showed planning and coordination and posed a serious threat. I texted Kara the word library, and she responded with 3 heart emojis and said Mia was crying with relief. Larry showed up at my building the next morning with a new lock cylinder and some kind of digital system that would track who entered the building and when. He spent 2 hours replacing the master lock and installing sensors on the main entrance, and when he finished, he handed me a new key for my apartment door and told me he wasn't charging me anything because the security gap was his responsibility. The digital log would send alerts to his phone whenever someone used the master key, so nobody could access it without him knowing immediately. I thanked him and went back inside to start dealing with my apartment, which still felt wrong even though I knew nobody could get in anymore. I spent the next 3 days cleaning everything and moving furniture around to change how the space looked. My couch went against a different wall, and my desk moved to the corner where my bookshelf used to be. Rearranging everything helped, because I stopped seeing that shadow figure from the security footage every time I walked through my living room. The new layout made it feel like my space again instead of somewhere someone had violated. A week after the protective orders were issued, a lawyer representing Alex called and asked if I'd be willing to discuss a plea arrangement. I told him to talk to Tobias instead of me, and later that day Tobias called to explain what Alex was offering. Alex agreed to surrender all his phones, computers, and other devices for complete forensic examination. He'd maintain 0 contact with me and Mia, and he'd enter mandatory counseling in exchange for reduced charges. Tobias said it was a reasonable offer that would get us a conviction without going through a long trial. The gym friend with the tattoo got identified through membership records as someone Alex had met a few months back. His name was in the system, and security footage showed them working out together multiple times before the stalking started. He got charged as an accessory, and his lawyer worked out a deal where he'd testify about everything Alex asked him to do in exchange for a lighter sentence. He admitted Alex paid him to follow both me and Mia, break into my apartment to leave the laptop message, and help create alibis by being in certain places while Alex was somewhere else. Tobias called me to explain how the phone records showed the whole coordination plan. Alex and his friend had been texting back and forth to arrange timing, so Alex could claim he was at work or somewhere public, while his friend did the actual harassment. They'd planned it carefully to make it look impossible for Alex to be in two places at once, but the GPS data from the rental car and the phone tower pings proved they were working together. The forensic evidence was overwhelming once investigators had all the devices and records to examine. Alex eventually pleaded guilty to felony stalking, which the prosecutor agreed to reduce to a misdemeanor in exchange for the plea. He got 3 years of probation with GPS monitoring and mandatory therapy sessions twice a month. Tobias told me it wasn't the maximum penalty possible, but it was a solid outcome that guaranteed Alex would be monitored and tracked for years. The GPS ankle monitor meant we'd get alerts if he came anywhere near campus or our neighborhoods, and any violation would send him straight to jail. Mia found a new apartment across town in a building with better security features, including cameras in all the hallways and a front desk that checked everyone who entered. Kara helped her move, and I stopped by briefly to carry some boxes up the stairs. Mia and I talked for a few minutes, but we both understood we needed distance after everything that happened. Being around each other reminded us of the worst few weeks of our lives, and even though we'd been through it together, staying close felt like it would keep us stuck in that scared mindset. I started seeing a counselor through campus health services to work through the constant checking and worrying that someone was following me or breaking in. The counselor specialized in trauma response and taught me breathing techniques and ways to manage the anxiety that spiked whenever I heard unexpected noises. She explained that my nervous system had learned to stay on high alert, and it would take time to teach it that the danger was actually over. My economics professor sent me an email apologizing for the cheating accusation after campus IT traced the anonymous tip back to a library computer. Security footage from that day and time showed Alex's friend using that exact computer, which proved the whole thing was part of the harassment campaign. The false accusation got removed from my record completely, and the professor wrote a formal letter clearing my name. 3 weeks after the protective orders were issued, I slept through the entire night without waking up once to check the door camera on my phone. I woke up naturally when my alarm went off and realized I hadn't thought about Alex or checked the app even once during the night. It felt like a small victory, but my counselor said it was actually a big sign that my nervous system was starting to regulate again and trust that I was safe. Sheila called me every Tuesday afternoon to give me updates on Alex's probation status. She'd tell me where the GPS monitoring showed he'd been that week and confirm he was staying away from campus and both neighborhoods. Hearing that he was complying with the court orders helped me sleep better at night. I stopped checking the door camera app every 10 minutes and started leaving my apartment without that constant fear that someone was waiting outside. Kara sent me a text about 3 weeks after the court proceedings finished, saying Mia wanted me to know she was doing better. She'd started seeing a therapist who worked with people dealing with trauma and stalking situations. Kara forwarded me a short message from Mia, thanking me for believing her story and helping gather evidence that made the case strong enough to get the protective orders. Reading those words meant more to me than I expected, because I'd been worried that getting involved had somehow made everything worse for her. My grades started climbing back up once I could actually focus on studying, instead of constantly looking over my shoulder or jumping at every unexpected noise. My economics professor gave me extensions on 2 papers after I explained what had been happening during the investigation. My calculus teacher let me retake an exam I'd bombed during the worst week of the stalking. I finished the semester with a 3.4 GPA, which wasn't perfect, but felt like a huge win considering everything that had happened. Campus Safety invited me to attend a training session where they used our case as an example for their officers. Sheila walked the other officers through how we'd documented every incident from the very beginning and how that documentation had been critical for building the legal case. She explained the new protocol they were putting in place that required officers to take stalking reports seriously from the first incident instead of waiting for things to get worse. They'd coordinate with local police right away and help students set up the kind of evidence gathering that Sheila had helped me with. Larry Wooten sent out a notice to everyone in my building about new security cameras he was installing in all the hallways and common areas. He put cameras at every entrance and exit and added better lighting in the parking lot. 3 different neighbors stopped me in the hallway over the next few days to thank me for pushing for better security measures. One older woman told me she'd been asking for cameras for 2 years and nothing had happened until our situation forced the issue. Tobias called me about 6 weeks after Alex started his probation to tell me there'd been a violation. Alex's probation officer had caught him trying to contact Mia through a fake social media account he'd created using a different name. The probation officer showed Tobias the account and the messages Alex had tried to send. The violation resulted in additional penalties, including stricter monitoring conditions and mandatory anger management classes on top of his regular therapy sessions. I started walking to my car alone at night instead of calling the campus escort service every time. The fear didn't vanish completely, but it became something I could manage, instead of something that controlled every decision I made. I still stayed aware of my surroundings and trusted my gut when something felt off. If a parking lot seemed too empty or a person behind me was walking too close, I'd change my route or go back inside and wait. 6 months after everything happened, I ran into Mia outside the student union. We both stopped, and there was this awkward second where neither of us knew what to say. Then she smiled and asked how I was doing, and we talked for maybe 5 minutes about classes and how the semester was going. We didn't talk about Alex or the stalking or any of the scary stuff we'd been through together. We both knew we were in better places now, and forcing some kind of friendship would just keep us tied to the worst experience of our lives. We said goodbye and went our separate ways, and it felt right. My counselor and I spent the last few sessions working through the remaining hypervigilance issues I was still dealing with. She taught me techniques for managing the anxiety that would spike when I heard footsteps behind me or saw a car that looked similar to the blue sedan. By the time we finished therapy, I felt like I had real tools for handling stress and worry in healthy ways. The skills extended way beyond just dealing with the aftermath of being stalked. I could use them for test anxiety and relationship stress and all the normal college problems that used to overwhelm me. Corey stopped by my apartment one afternoon to check on the security system he'd helped me set up months earlier. While he was there, he mentioned that campus IT was looking for students to help other people set up similar security measures for their apartments and phones. He asked if I'd be interested in a part-time job doing that kind of work. I said yes immediately, because it felt good to think about using what I'd learned to help other people protect themselves. The job would pay decent money and give me something productive to do with all the knowledge I'd gained about cameras and apps and documentation during the worst few weeks of my life. I started the campus IT security job 3 weeks later and spent my first shifts helping 2 students set up doorbell cameras and phone tracking apps. The work felt meaningful because I could explain exactly why each security measure mattered and how to document incidents properly if something went wrong. A year after everything started, I got a notice about a court hearing to review the protective order. Tobias called me the day before to explain that Alex's probation officer had reported the fake social media account violation, and the judge would decide whether to extend the order based on that and the original case severity. The hearing took about 40 minutes, and I sat in the back while Tobias presented the violation evidence and the GPS data showing Alex had maintained proper distance for most of the year, except for the social media incident. The judge extended the protective order for another 3 years, without much debate, and added language about online contact attempts counting as violations. Tobias walked out with me after and assured me the GPS monitoring would continue for the full extension period, and Alex still had mandatory therapy twice a month. I thanked him for everything he'd done, and he said I'd made his job easier by documenting everything so thoroughly from the start. I'm in a completely different place now than I was that day in the restaurant when Mia asked me to sit nearby. I've got better boundaries, and I don't automatically say yes when people ask me for favors that make me uncomfortable. The friends who supported me through everything stayed close, and I learned who I could actually count on when things got scary. I still check my door camera sometimes, and I'm aware of cars behind me when I drive, but the fear doesn't control my decisions anymore. The confidence that comes from surviving something genuinely frightening and coming out stronger on the other side changes how you move through the world. I know I can handle hard situations now, and I know when to ask for help instead of trying to manage everything alone. The campus security job turned into something I'm good at, and I've helped 12 students set up safety measures in the past year. Sometimes I think about that lunch with Mia and wonder what would have happened if I'd said no, but mostly, I'm just glad I trusted my instincts when things started feeling wrong, and I acted instead of hoping the problem would go away on its own. And that's the thrilling tale of how saying yes to lunch turned into a full-blown stalking investigation. Fun times. If you enjoyed me narrating an hour-long crime story, might as well subscribe. Or don't. I'm sure you have better things to do than binge-watch true crime content. See you next time, I guess.